Today with me I've got Deb from Birth Talk, and I'll let her explain what that organisation does. But I invited her on here to talk about the role language plays in, I guess, decisions around pregnancy and birth, but also as a consumer, what's really important to, I guess, get your eye in and ear in for language, and because of, I guess, the impact it has on potentially consumers coming after you when you contribute to, whether it's in meetings or forums or things like that.
Yeah, well, hi, good morning. It's lovely to be here. So I'm from birthtalk.org and I'm a co-founder of Birth Talk, and we aim to make birth better for women in our community. And it's really important, women deserve to feel confident and powerful and strong going into motherhood. And with our work, we've found that that can be greatly impacted by their experiences during their pregnancy and their birth. So part of our work has been also raising awareness and supporting women and families who've had negative experiences with their birth, and helping them to heal from that. And so I guess we've been honoured in a way to have this window looking in over 15 years on the things that really profoundly impact women during those periods, and particularly during the birth, because they're usually a bit more acutely vulnerable at that point. But really anywhere through the perinatal period, so anywhere through pregnancy, birth and postnatally. So language is hugely important because basically this is a life experience for these women and their families, and language is the way that we communicate and how we set up the whole dynamic, how it impacts on how they feel, and it impacts on their confidence, all sorts of things. And so as health consumers, we're here because we know that births and these experiences are important and it's valuable, and women are valuable. So we just want to make sure we do no harm. So in our time, we know that whether women have a positive or a negative experience is mostly depends on how they felt through their birth or through their perinatal experience. So yes, what happened, but more so how they felt. And how they felt often has a lot to do with their interactions that they're having, and the experiences that they're having. So that gives us a really powerful way to support them with language as well. So for women who have positive experiences, some of the key elements in terms of how they feel is that they feel central to their birth, and they feel acknowledged, and they feel that their expertise, often which they don't even know they have initially, but their expertise when they voice it is listened to, and they feel safe to ask questions, all those sorts of things. And that is often how well that occurs for them is usually set up through language that they've encountered and through the interpersonal communication with the people they're dealing with. So we really want to facilitate them and almost empower them to hear us using language that they use, which then supports the people supporting them to use positive language as well. So I think when we're talking about this, we always mention that you have to be really conscious about the vulnerability of women during this period. So it's not that we have to tiptoe around women or that women are fragile, not at all. Women are amazing and strong, but there's certain things going on in pregnancy and during birth which makes them more vulnerable. So there's hormonal things going on that are making them wanting to make sure they're safe. So they've got this safety radar. I mean, even in their general senses, those of you who have been pregnant know that your sense of smell heightens, your hearing heightens, everything heightens because you've got this safety radar going on. So we don't want to put any beeps on the woman's radar or to make her feel unsafe in any language that we use. And secondly, the hormones are also making her kind of gearing her to feeling dependent on those around her during her birthing, perhaps dependent on family or partner support in the early mothering days. And so she wants to feel dependent, but she has to feel safe to be able to do so. And if we can get that right, if we can make her feel safe and central and empowered, then her experiences are going to be much better, and her outcomes are going to be much better. She's actually going to birth better in that scenario as well. So I guess I often talk about conscious constructive care, so we're really conscious about the vulnerability, and what comes out of our mouth, we want it to be constructive. We want it to empower her. We want it to let her know that she's an expert in her own body. We want her to know that this is her life experience, and she has the right to consent. She has the right to decline. Basically, we want to make her feel that she's not powerless and that she's not helpless in the scenario, because if she does feel like that, there's going to be negative consequences with that. And we want to set her up that she is actually an expert in her baby and her body, and we want her to recognize that, so then she can be part of the team looking after her, whether that's with you as a consumer rep advocating for her, part of that team, or with her midwife or her obstetrician, that they all, everybody, yourself, the obstetrician, the midwives will bring expertise to the table, but so will the woman will bring expertise about herself, her baby, and her body. And they need to be valued equally. So firstly, we need to be careful of what we say to her, but we also can counteract what other people are saying to her. And so common things, Alicia, I mean, you would have heard 10 million of them, but common things are just saying, oh, they're letting me do this, or they're allowing me to do this. And just reframing that for them, without making a big deal. I mean, depending on the scenario, but you can just say, oh, so that's what they're comfortable with. What are you comfortable with? Okay, well, it's not up to them to let you. This is your decision. And I guess, I mean, I just made the mistake then, not being as conscious as I should have, as saying, when I said them, trying to get away from the us and them, just saying, okay, so that's what your midwife thinks, and what is it that you're thinking, and what does your team think? So just trying to get a collaborative approach, but keeping her central, and that her opinion or her thoughts are incredibly valuable, and her decision on it is the ultimate decision, that she has all rights around that. I think when we're talking with healthcare professionals, and they're asking you perhaps to feed back to your consumers things that they might be doing or wanting fed, information they're wanting to go out there, it's really important. You can make a crucial role in looking at the language in what they've written, and making sure that it's not sounding like that the woman is a passive recipient of what they've got to offer, because she's actually needs to feel like she's employing them as her team. And if we can sort of get that happening, we're actually empowering her, we're giving her confidence in her body, she's learning that she's actually capable to make decisions, and that will hold her in good stead during those times where it's vulnerable and she needs to work with people around her, rather than her feeling like her voice is lost and feeling helpless and powerless. It's also a great, often we believe that the journey in pregnancy and motherhood, pregnancy and birth is actually preparing us for motherhood too. So it can be, it's a definite time of transformation and powerful change for women, and that can be either really positive, which is how it should be in the majority of cases, but isn't the current reality for a lot of women. But it can also be really negative and ripple on. So we can counteract that a lot by making them feel central, making them feel that they have expertise, making them feel that things are their choices, and because in reality it is, and it's through language that's stripped from them often. The language makes them feel like they don't have an option. The language makes them feel like it's not up to them. The language makes them feel like they're being irresponsible if they're wanting to come through feeling positively, healthy, mentally healthy. So, and we can really hold hold ourselves and the health professionals accountable. And often health professionals will say, well, of course we don't mean it like that. But if you can think that someone could misperceive it, it needs to be changed, and changed in a way that you think, okay, that they couldn't perceive it in an empowering way. Does that make sense?
Yes, oh, absolutely. So I guess, have you got any, examples? Because I know that you do provide feedback around forms, and I think one that's quite interesting and probably well overdue is at the moment they're requesting feedback for women who decline recommended care. Are there any, things that have stood out or maybe need reframing in, say, something like that? Because the language used in that, to me, because I've seen it, is often replicated in other guidelines as well.
Yes. Now, I think they're making quite an effort in that to try and work on the language. So there's parts where I'm like, that's really positive. I guess more there's still an element of bear with me a second, I've lost my train of thought. So within there, we just want to make sure that the women's, I think, what I'm going to say there is, I think that we really need to acknowledge that birth and the experience of birth is actually of value to women. And so when they're talking about their choices, they might be asking about, what's the reasons for them making this choice, and we need to tell them about the benefits and the risks of the care that they're declining, or the treatment option that we want to offer. But they're not. There's still that element of not talking about the benefits or the value of what the woman's wanting. So understanding, that. And I think we really need to come from a standpoint that it's incredibly unusual for a woman ever to want to do something that's not to the benefit of herself and her child. Yeah, so that kind of arrogant stance, not saying that that's in that document, but the arrogant stance that often comes across, that, women are selfish and doing things for their own good. They are the key stakeholders in their child and their life. So, we need to be very careful that even if we have a strong opinion, that we don't put that onto them, because either they have more context or they have more information than we do about themselves, their expertise, or we need to give them more information and education around something. I don't think it's incredibly rare that someone would choose to do something that they genuinely thought, well, I don't care what happens. They're doing it because that they perceiving a benefit for themselves, and often there is a benefit for themselves, and that needs to be weighed up just with as much value as the value of perhaps intervening with something. So I think sometimes that gets lost. The value and benefit of intervening, or the value and risk of intervening, is discussed, but the value and risk of not intervening is not discussed as clearly. So,
that's seeing, sorry to interrupt, but we're seeing the consequences of that, because we look at like our high PMD rates and our high PMD rates, and that's the consequence of really not valuing that woman's, experience outside. That focus around the medicalisation of birth.
Yeah. Well, 1 in 3 women are suffering trauma after their birth, and it's really important. Hopefully, the consumer reps are learning or already have a fair knowledge around birth, but it's important to know that that's not the way it should be. Women should, as I said, be able to come through feeling confident and strong, but that's not the reality we're in. And most of that trauma, or a large proportion of that trauma, is not from overt things. So it's not obvious things like the baby was incredibly unwell, or something drastic happened with the mother, or there was a major emergency. The majority of it is actually from inovert things, you know, to do with how their experience, how they felt during it. And so if you're doing anything that makes the woman feel less confident or less capable, or that you don't care for her, or that she's not central, there has to be a really good reason for that, and that needs to be very well balanced with trying to, at the same time, make her feel confident and capable in other areas, saying, look, you know, this is what my concern is that this could be this, you know, this could happen or this could happen, but this, you know, this may not happen as well, and this, you know, so this could happen, or perhaps nothing will happen, but the fear is this, but, you know, what are you thinking? You know, like, you know, I even speak like that when I'm talking to women about when they want to go to hospital. You know, I usually don't say anything about when they want to go to hospital, they decide, but occasionally, you know, things are looking very, okay, I know they want to be in hospital, you know, it's cutting a little fine here. But I still, you know, I in that scenario when I'm with women, I'm not assessing them. I don't know how dilated they are. But my language is still like, in even that scenario, okay, something like, I think that it will be okay for you to go to hospital whenever you feel that you want to. I'm just going to put some things in the car so that when you want to go, we can go. You know, or you know, I think it would be all right if, or, you know, how I think that you're in good established labour. How do you feel? And then sometimes they might go, no, I'm good. I want to stay here longer. Okay. And other times they might go, yeah, yep. And, but, you know, I'm even reluctant to do that sort of thing on the majority of occasions, because women are so open to suggestion at that time. So even though I'm offering an opinion, I'm actually bringing down the expertise of the opinion as I'm offering it, you know, because I'm just trying to say, look, my opinion doesn't override yours. I'm just giving you some information from my expertise. I'm giving you insight, and you tell me what you want to do with it, you know. And if they want your direct opinion on something, they will ask it, but we really need to get the ego out. And I know as a consumer rep, you know, it's what would I say? I'm not trying to say consumer reps are trying to be important. They're not, you know, they're doing it because they're passionate. But anybody wants to feel acknowledged and validated, and they want their expertise acknowledged. So it's nice, I guess, to feel that you have expertise in a role, whether it's as a consumer rep or as a midwife or whatever it might be. But when you're talking to women, you really need to be careful to really drop the ego and get that role out of there, because you want them to feel just as expert, you know, that to recognize and feel that they have just as much expertise, and they're just as valuable to the team, or actually more valuable than the team, than anybody else. And our culture and our system doesn't do that, generally speaking. And so we almost have to overdo it to counteract that. So, you know, in our system, there's a lot of language of us and them, and we'll allow you, and there's still that sort of paternalistic type attitude. There's still not a lot of recognition that women have incredible insight into their own bodies and birth. And so, you know, it's almost like leveling the playing field all the time. So even when you're with a health professional and a woman, just turning to her and saying, what do you think? You know, and keeping her central and part of it, rather than discussing her case, you know, separate to her. So,
yeah, I definitely agree, and it's interesting that you're saying about the interpersonal communication, and we often, like as a consumer rep that works in a few different positions, reviewing those things are very much written, almost like that paternalistic, how it would be communicated to the woman, which is, you know, you will need this, this will happen to you, without actually, like, okay, as a guideline, this should be discussed with the woman, and what does she think? Like, we're still, it's still very slow moving, and I think I was saying to you earlier that for us as women, it's so normalised that often we actually can't see that, because that's often how we've experienced care, and I think we have quite a low standard of satisfaction, or I shouldn't say satisfaction, but expectation of our satisfaction should be, you know, because it's been that normalised culture,
And
you know, that you shouldn't expect a lot.
yeah, and health professionals are part of that culture too. They're part of our broader culture. So often, if I have in the past said, I think we need to change the language around this, there's been a lot of offence, and of course that's what we mean. You know, we wouldn't be in this profession if we didn't care, and language, you know, and whereas I sort of, you have to acknowledge, yes, I understand that, but that language is actually portraying a certain thing to women, and it's actually disempowering them. And you may say that that's what you all do, but when you're doing your job on the day, or there's something, an emergency happening, or things going on, often those things are lost in amongst everything else that's going on for you, and the woman always has to be kept central. And you know, it's quite, so that language, that correct language, that positive language, that supportive and empowering language needs to be used to women. It needs to be used in documentation, because then it starts getting assimilated into the culture by health professionals as well. So, you know, and by women. But, you know, women just start saying, well, you know, I don't think I want to, you know, they feel that they can actually, it's safe to ask those questions. They can say their opinion without feeling like someone's going to imply they're not making decisions, you know, for the best interest of their unborn child. Someone's not going to judge them as being selfish, because it's, you know, this mother baby is a package, and we need them both to come out feeling, you know, as physically and emotionally healthy as possible. And both of those things are incredibly important. And if we don't use language well, we get a whole bunch not coming out, not so, definitely not as emotionally well, and often that can actually impact outcomes as well, and physically not so well as well. And as you were saying before about PND and maternal things like maternal suicide is the biggest cause of, you know, postnatal death now, and you know, beats heart attacks and infections and all sorts of things. So we really need to look at this, one, to prevent mental illness, and prevent women being emotionally unhealthy, but two, let's get a little bit preventative, I suppose. Let's preempt it, and actually we can actually make women support women to come through incredibly healthy and empowered and strong, and take that into their families and their communities. And you know, the ripple-on effect is that is quite profound. So it's almost like these little things can make huge differences. And you know, we did a conference last year where we talked about it almost being like not just language, but just the way that we care for women and the way we support them. That it's almost like we've got this epidemic of women who are having post-traumatic stress disorder, and who are having disappointment and grief over their birth, and trauma symptoms. We've got this really really significant number of women who are being negatively impacted. And you know, if we sort of use an analogy of an epidemic of an infection or a disease, you know, we do something really simple like hand washing, and we do it every time we interact with them, and it's not very exciting, it's not wow, it's just thinking about it, doing it properly. We do it every single time, and we can stop that epidemic. And if we don't do that correctly, it doesn't matter what amazing things we do and what amazing services we set up and what amazing emergency procedures we have, and you know, and we do amazing things for maternal and neonatal morbidity and mortality. We can't stop the epidemic if we don't do the little things. You know, it will still spread. You do all these amazing things, the infection will keep going if you don't wash the hands. So, and you know, we all have to wash our hands, whether the obstetrician, the midwife, or the consumer rep. You know, we all have to do that, and by doing that, we're keeping the woman safe, and we're keeping her healthy, and we're keeping her going forth without any baggage or stuff that we've given her.
Yeah, I like that analogy. Oh, absolutely. And I've said for some time as well that it's very much about preventative rather than, we've got such a systematic, treat the symptoms, but
Yes.
it's so easy really to prevent this if each one of us, and when I'm saying us, I'm talking about care providers as well, because we want a partnership and move away from this us first then. But it really is simple what you're saying, like to totally transform the health system around maternity care and women's life and that community around her.
And even eventually transform the culture, potentially. If you could do that, our outcomes for women and families would be vastly different. And yes, we as I said, our aim is to make birth better, and so much of it is preventative, and we're passionate about that. But there was such an epidemic, and there is such an epidemic of women who have been damaged and have been traumatized and are disappointed and are grieving from their birth, that we thought before we can make birth better for them, we have to help them heal. And that, I guess I would also say that to the maternity consumers, like I've lost the word, consumer reps, sorry, is also, you're probably becoming a rep because you're passionate. And you might be passionate because you've had an amazing, empowering experience and you want everybody to have that. Or you might be passionate because you weren't treated well and you don't want any other woman to go through that, and the system needs to change. Just meet the woman where she's at. Just remember that. Like, if you've got, take your zest or your trauma outwards. Take it to people outwards, and don't bring it in on that woman, because if you're like, they are doing this, and watch them with that, and even though you're trying perhaps to prevent what happened to you, you're actually not making them feel safe, and you're not making them feel empowered, and you're not making them feel that they can be dependent on those people. So it's more about using the language to get them to ask the questions so they can make the best choices for themselves. And if you do need support with your stuff, where there's other people that, you'll be surrounded probably by other consumer reps and Alicia, and, just make sure you don't put your stuff onto somebody else as well. And if, at the same time, really, your stuff needs to be heard.
And that's a really good point, because, we're all at a different stage, and I sometimes think too, we only know what we know at the time. But I like that point of almost like coming to where the woman is and almost just holding space for her. Let's empower her to then.
Yeah, and you can often say you can plant seeds. You just plant some seeds, and if she wants to let that grow, she will, and she'll ask some more, rather than, terrify her, because then she'll just run the other direction from you as well. And no matter what you think is the right thing, or what you would do, or what I think is the right thing, or what I would do, or even if you see somebody that it's going down a path that then isn't great, you can only support them with information. If you put onto them what you think is right, you're actually disempowering them and giving them your journey. You need to empower them with their journey. And as long as they feel those things that I talked about before, that they feel confident and central and able to ask questions and involved in decision making, and that they were cared for or heard, those sort of things, they weren't powerless, they might come out the other end and say, with the next baby, I might make some different choices, and that's okay. But they will still come out feeling positive and strong and confident, and go, and then they can make perhaps better choices down the track if that's what they, if it's better for them. So again, meeting them where they're at, and letting them take their own journey. So and then they can hear more too, because if they hear judgment, they'll close down.
Very good point. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and obviously this will be part of our consumer rep training, so I'll upload it on our Facebook page just to give people some insight, but I really appreciate your time, and again, thanks for all you do for the birthing community. I would like to acknowledge that you guys actually received the Australia Day Award.
Oh, thank you.
And I think it's really well overdue, so thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Alicia, I just want to say that if you, down the track, if you have consumer reps who want to do a session with a a Q&A or something like that, or have a talk, because often when they ask about specific circumstances, it's much easier to just give some insight there.
Yeah, absolutely. It might, yeah, I mean, what we might be able to do is organise maybe like a Zoom where people can log on and we do a bit of a round table, because that way too, people, if they don't want to be seen, they can not turn the video on and make up a little name. Yes.
Yeah. Anonymous. What do I do in this scenario? Or just what language can I use to diffuse it, or to empower, or to help, or
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you so much again.
You're very welcome.
Right,
bye.
Bye.